For this review, I was determined to do one thing. Finally finish the original Metroid. It's never been done. Well, it's never been done by me. I've had multiple attempts, but had never been successful. Until a few weeks ago, that is. And with Metroid Dread coming out roughly a month or so ago, I figured, why not review the OG game since I'm playing it through anyway? I don't really know if I truly need to go over the story, but I will anyway. You play as Samus Aran, an interplanetary bounty hunter, on a simple task. Hunt down the Metroid, a hostile creature that resembles a flying jellyfish. That and a few space pirates need to be taken down as well. To do all of this, Samus has to explore the planet of Zebes and find different ways of traversing the dangerous foreign land. At the start of the game, Samus simply has a standard energy shot and a fairly bouncy jump. You'll soon find that by going right that Samus can't fit in the small crevice. Come to find out, you had to break a ton of NES rules and first traveled to the left to find a morphing ball. This was unheard of back in the day, as many games at the time locked the screen to only move forward, so you couldn't backtrack to the left. Needless to say, exploration plays a heavy part in Metroid. Not only will you have to go left, but also up and down through large vertical shafts, along with shooting and bombing walls, floors, and ceilings to hunt for potential secret areas. Sometimes these secret zones feature optional upgrades, but often they are required in order to properly progress in the game. Take for example the Kraid boss. You originally see him, defeat him, and then may find that the bridge to the final part of the game didn't appear. That's because the Kraid you've probably found somewhat easily is a fake. The real one is hidden away beneath a breakable floor, found by bombing a very specific block, and only that block. Without knowing this, you might have had to result in literally shooting or bombing every single pixel of the game, which would grow quite tiresome quickly. Unfortunately, there is no built-in map, so originally I tried to play as I would have as a 10-year-old would have. Piece of paper next to me, pencil in hand, meticulously plotting out every room, door, upgrade, and secret. But I eventually abandoned that plan after I had about 2 sheets of frustrated scribbles with no freaking clue on where I was supposed to go. Because no matter how detailed you are, were you going to know that you had to jump down a false lava pit to get anywhere? Or maybe you just knew to shoot a specific block in a wall and then jump up there in ball form using a bomb to continue to the door to the next room. The game almost never gives hints on where to go or what you need to do. So you either need a guide, lots of patience, or what we used to have to do as kids without the internet did, and talk to friends at recess to see if they had any ideas. Figuring it's almost 2022 and I have the interwebs at my fingertips and own a quality color inkjet printer, I opted to print off a good map of the world of Metroid, complete with secrets and upgrades. Yes, it takes some of the satisfaction of finding the stuff on your own away, but I'm a few years away from 40 and getting less and less patient in my older age. Well, that, and without it, I seriously had no clue on where I was supposed to go. It's not the way I wanted to play it, however, and next time I get around to replaying Metroid, I won't need a map. Hopefully. So enough of my excuses on why I failed myself. Let's talk about the gameplay of the game, beyond just the exploration bits. Obviously, it's an action game. The whole goal is to defeat the 2 space pirates, Ridley and Kraid, find the bridge, cross it, survive a bunch of Metroid attacks, destroy the mastermind Mother Brain, and climb up a chasm before you blow up along with the planet. There are plenty of creatures that want you dead, and you'll have a few weapons available to take them down. The first is the default pea shooter, which doesn't have much range. You'll quickly find missiles, which are equipped by pressing select, and is the most powerful weapon available. The missiles aren't only used for destroying tough enemies, as 5 of them are also needed to open up any red doors that you find, although this only needs to be done once per door, as the red doors disappear once you dismantle them. Missiles are also the only weapon that have a limited ammo capacity. However, finding missile pods will increase your max missile capacity by 5, up to a maximum of 255. In addition, enemies may drop missiles, along with health, upon defeat, so grinding may be necessary at spots where the enemies respawn infinitely. In addition to the missiles, there are a few other weapons you can locate. A long beam can be found early on to make your shots travel fully across the screen, as opposed to maybe halfway across. An ice beam is the only weapon found in 2 different locations, and is also required to make the Metroids vulnerable. It freezes the enemies solid, allowing you to use them as platforms. Although this isn't used frequently, there is a need at times. The only thing that really sucks about the Ice Beam is that since enemies only take damage when shooting them and removing their frozen state, it technically takes twice as many shots to kill your enemies, which may result in a very tired B button pressing finger, so turbo controllers are highly beneficial. Finally, you can find the Wave Beam. Although it's the same power level as all other non-missile weapons, the travel pattern makes it much more useful since it hits enemies slightly higher or lower than Samus. The drawback of this is that you cannot have the Ice Beam and Wave Beams at the same time. So if you do decide to hunt down the Wave Beam, you'll have to eventually sub it back out with the Ice Beam before tackling the final zone. Otherwise, you'll be swarmed by the Metroids with no way to fight back. There are a few other things you can find. A high jump allows Samus to jump higher, and it's required if you want to find the Various suit, which cuts down the amount of damage Samus takes from enemies. More fall bombs not only open up fragile pathways, but are also the only way to hit the frequent knee-high enemies unless you opt for the Wave Beam. The screw attack is a strange name, and it was probably a mistranslation of corkscrew, but Samus becomes a deadly buzzsaw whenever she jumps in the air and starts flipping. It can be a bit tricky to get the hang of, but once you do, it becomes a devastating attack to utilize. Finally, there are E-tanks you can find. They act as an extension of your normal life gauge and add an extra 100 points of energy to your reserves. You can carry a max of 5 of these. There are more to be found in case you've missed a few, which is bound to happen, especially if you aren't using a map. I mean, come on. Would you have known to look at the breakable block in the ceiling here at the very beginning of the game, and then come back with the Ice Beam to get up there? Even with all of these power-ups, the game can still be brutal in its difficulty. The only way to regain life is to defeat enemies, and hope they drop a measly 5 or 20 point health pellet. In later areas, enemies can decimate you quickly, and if you are continuing from a game over or inputting a password, you start at 30 life points, regardless on how many energy tanks you have found. Imagine starting with 30 HP and needing to spend a few minutes grinding to regenerate. Yeah, it's not exactly the most exciting part of the game. Anyway, enemies will constantly harass you, and they get faster as you get deeper and deeper into these mysterious caverns. The Various suit definitely makes things a lot easier, as did the Wave Beam and Screw Attack. By the time you are forced to bring out the Ice Beam for the final stretch, the only enemies really left are the Metroids and odd circle projectiles. Metroids require 5 rocket blasts while frozen to be defeated, and if they latch onto you, the only way to get them off is to morph into your ball form and use the bombs to attempt to pop them off. Otherwise, you'll see your life drain at a rapid rate. The circles are actually more of a nuisance than the Metroids, since their firing location seems to be completely random. In the final battle, things get flat out chaotic. Although there won't be any additional Metroids, you'll have to contend with the dismantling barriers that regenerate until completely destroyed, those circle shots, and even some lava. And once you actually meet up with the infamous Mother Brain, you'll have to break her shield open and keep firing missiles while avoiding the circles of death. Finally, if you get pushed off into the lava pit to the left, good freaking luck getting out. I managed to survive with just a small sliver of life left, but once you finish the game and see the ending, you really do feel a good sense of accomplishment. Yes, Metroid is a classic gem in the NES library, but it's not completely without its faults. For one, the graphics aren't exactly the greatest. Yes, it is an early game in NES lifespan, but a bit more detail would have been nice. Yet at the same time, I'm not really complaining about the environment itself, but more so about the enemies. The world is dreary, gloomy, dark, and portrays a very dark, solitary feeling. Yet every room looks similar, with minimal landmarks that may help you determine where you are. In addition, many rooms just feel like they are copy and pasted. As for the creatures you face, well, there's only really a few. They may look a bit different, but they all have the same attack patterns. You have the smaller creatures that you can't shoot standing up unless you have the Wave Beam, the insects that keep respawning, and the flying enemies. Other than a few exceptions, that's about it for enemies. In essence, they're just simple pellet swaps without being actual pellet swaps, if that makes sense. The graphics can also bug out a bit. I guess it's to be expected considering the magnitude of the game for the time, as it was unusual to have a game where you traveled in 2D both horizontally and vertically. The graphical glitches normally happen in the vertical areas if you fall down quickly, but can be seen in other areas as well. It's nothing game-breaking, well, unless you use that infamous potential game-breaking password, but there's enough videos on YouTube about that. If you've never heard of it, search for Larry Bundy Jr.'s offensive password video. It's great. Another grip is something I've already talked about. The labyrinthian, secretive style of the world design. I can handle exploring the map for hours on end. I'm the person who plays open world games and does all the side quest stuff before hitting the main storyline stuff, so exploration is no stranger to me. But when there's hidden areas that give absolutely no hints, no clues, no nothing, and they are required to actually get anywhere, it could just be frustrating. Okay, I'm done complaining about that, I promise. The password system is functional, but why wasn't the battery save feature from the Japanese Famicom version brought over to us? I'm sure it had something to do with technological limitations, as I'm not entirely sure the battery backups were available yet, but it would have been nice. Oh well, at least the password isn't terribly long, but there are lowercase letters along with the uppercase ones, so that can be annoying, I suppose. Metroid might be a difficult game, but it's definitely not the most difficult in the NES library. It's a game that will require some serious patience or a map, and even with a map, areas might be difficult to reach without sufficient power-ups. But other than that, it's a seriously enjoyable experience, and one that sets up the basis for a fantastic franchise. Eventually, I'll have to play more of the modern Metroid games, as I've only ever played the original, Super Metroid, and Fusion, and now can play all three of those, but the other games are definitely on my radar. As for the original, it's definitely a worthy game to add to any collection. Final score? 6 out of 7. This is Reaper. Happy fragging.